chapter 10. Okay, we're going to go over chapter 10, then chapter 11. We'll see what time it is. If there's enough time, we'll also quickly go over the capstone. Okay, all right. So again, I'm on page 106. The author in our book uses EJS, embedded JavaScript. What it is, if you think about it right now, you've got your, you've got the index.html, excuse me, you've got the index.html in your capstone, you've got courses.html in your capstone, and you've got an about or something like that. I know you got that thank you in the air, but those are your three main ones, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem, so to speak, with what you have, and it's a problem with client-side code, it's hard to share. Wouldn't it have been nice if you could have just written all of your stuff at the top of the program, and all of your header stuff, etc., and all of your footer stuff once, and then used it 3 times? That's what you can do with templates. All right, so that's what they're talking about here. Again, our author uses embedded JavaScript. What you'll see on the next page, we're not there yet, but what you'll see on the next page is, again, there's embedded JavaScript, there's mustache, there's handlebars, there's underscore, and there's something that's called pug that used to be called Jade. All right, so there's more than one way of doing the same thing. So the author says it's a syntax for applying JavaScript functions and variables within your views. In other words, it's taking the server-side stuff that you're working on and allowing you to inject JavaScript into it. It's very similar to putting script tags in a regular file, but it's even stronger than that. It says you start by setting up EJS with your application and seeing how templating engines work. By the end of the lesson, it says you'll understand the syntax. No, you won't, but you'll understand it after you've used it a while. Okay? Then, as it says, we'll put in the layouts. That's going to allow the dynamicity. So in other words, if I've got 5 web pages and all 5 web pages are supposed to have the same header and footer, why not just put it in there once? And that's what you can do with the layout. So as it says, the lesson has 3 objectives: connecting a templating engine to your application, passing data from your controllers to your views, and setting up express express.js layouts. All right, now turning to the next page. Second paragraph down on page 107, part of what makes Express so popular is its ability to work with other packages and tools. One is a templating engine. So this is the author's definition, and it's a good one. It allows your views to insert dynamic data. That's it. That's what it does. It brings dynamicity. So the major templating engines, I already mentioned these to you. And again, I think I said that Paul is having his class use Mustache. You'll have to take my word for it. They all virtually work the same. On the next test, you're asked to use Mustache. You don't have to. You can use embedded JavaScript. It's fine. So they mentioned underneath that, bottom of page 107, a templating engine is what Express uses to process your views and convert them. So what's going to happen is, in addition to having your index.html file, you're going to have an index.ejs file. And in addition to having your courses.html file, you'll have a courses.ejs file, etc., to bring the dynamic component into this. So as it says, any non-HTML lines are converted to HTML. So in other words, it's allowing your HTML to talk with server-side JavaScript. That's pretty darn powerful stuff. And that's what they're showing you on page 108 in the picture. I'm not going to read it, all right, but let's just look at it. So again, as I mentioned, you're going to have both an index.html file and an index.ejs file. What will happen is you'll put these less than sign with a percent sign, then you'll embed your stuff in there, then a percent sign and a greater than sign, and that stuff that you're embedding will basically be defined inside of the index.ejs file. That's the extension EJS for embedded JavaScript. Okay. As it says, the templating engine converts the dynamic content into static HTML that it can understand. It can be returned to the user. So they're telling us here, if you look, I'm on right near the beginning, near the top of page 109. Let's do this, okay? Go back to your Visual Studio Code. Keep lines 1, 2, and 3. So keep those const statements that you have in there. Get rid of the app use. Get rid of the app post. Get rid of the app get. So all we should have in there, I've got like 3 blank lines, but my whole thing's about 9 or 10 lines long. So I've got those 3 const statements. Then I've got the .listen stuff. Okay, that's what I want you to have in yours. Right now it's flagging an error because there's nothing defining where it uses the listen. We'll fix that in just a minute. Okay, so they're giving an example here. So let's create this new thing that they show in here. All right, what do I mean? I mean this. Let's create a new file. So let's do a file, and we'll do a new file. And if you would, please immediately type in the code they have in listing 10.1. Don't go to save it yet, but just put that code in, please. We will use the let. Put your own name in there if you want. It really and truly doesn't matter. The author is just using his name. All right. When you get done with that, okay, and hopefully we're doing this right. I think we are. Do a file, do a save as. Don't do a save, do a save as. All right. And mine came up, and all it shows me is a folder that says, my folder that says node modules. All right. Right mouse click in an empty area in there. Do a new, do a folder, and in there type in views. All right. And hit enter. And open up that folder. Okay, then to save that file, put in double quote index.ejs. So double quote index.ejs for embedded.javascript, double quote. Nothing magical has happened to that right now, okay? Okay. So it says, let's create a route in main.js for the name path. You can think of a name for the controller function that relates to what the function will do. So it says we should have a home controller spot. We don't have that. So let's get that right now. Let's again do a file, new file. And let's put in those 2 lines that you see on the very bottom of page 109. Notice the case sensitivity in there, okay? Where it says respond with name. All right. You have that done? Okay, then do a file, save as. Now, it says, mine at least comes up and it says no items matched. That's totally fine. Again, right mouse click in here, do a new, do a folder. And I want to see if they have you save it with an S or without an S, so hold on. Okay, so we want to name this new folder controllers, controllers. Got that? Make sure that's open. And save the name of the file as double quote home, all in lowercase, then append the word controller to that with an uppercase C, .js. So homecontroller.js in double quotes. Make sure it's in your controllers folder. All right, and save. Then turn to page 110, please. And the author says there on the very top of the page, notice you didn't need the EJS extension for the index.ejs view, and you don't need to specify the folder that it lies in. So don't worry about it. We've got all that. Okay. Now, I don't think this is going to work because we don't have virtually anything inside of our main file that relates to this. So don't worry about it. All that I'm trying to get across to you is what we're doing in that file, the file that we just created. So the file you probably still have up, the homecontrollers.js file, what that is saying in English is exports.respond with name. The exports dot means we want to make this available in other files. All right. This thing is called respond with name. So what it's saying is any place that we put this in, basically what we want to do is we want to use the index.ejs file. That's the other file that we created. All right. So what that file is doing, what that file should do is now it should come up, and when we try to run this, it should say, hello, John. Does that make sense? All right. Section 10.2 on the bottom of page 110 says, now that your templates are rendering, the best way to use them is to pass data from your controllers to your views instead of defining them directly in the view. In other words, if you pass information from the controller to the view, I could essentially, for example, I could say, okay, you just asked for this database record. So the controller would pass that ID to the view. But if I hard code it in to the view itself, it's always asking for the same thing. All that makes sense? So again, we want to bring the dynamicity into this. All right? All right. So the author says really what we should do is we should remove the line in index.ejs that defines and assigns the name variable, but keep the h1 tag. So in other words, go back into that file that we just created. Why the author does some of the stuff, I'm not sure. All right, but remove line 1 for now and cut it so you still have it available to you, okay? So cut out line 1. So now all you've got in there is the h1 tag, right? All right, so save this again. Okay, and it says change your route to take a parameter in its path. Your route should look like the following. All right. So do you see this line right here that says app.get? Can you see all that stuff? Yeah. We want to put that line in. All right. We want to put that line in. So we want to take that line and we want to put that into our main.js file. Which doesn't have very much in it right now. All right. So it's got this app.get, etc., all the other good stuff that you see in there. Home controller, respond with name. All right? Correct? Okay. It says now the route takes a parameter at the end of the name path. To use this parameter, you need to access it from the request params in the home controller with the dot respond with name function. Then you can pass the variable to your view in a JavaScript object. So they want us to come over here and go and look on 10.3. All right, now go back to your home controller file. You've already got some of this in there, but what's new is we need to add a new line 2 in here that says let params name equals req.params.myname, and then the res.render changes too. I'm in the home controller.js file. You've got to make changes to lines 2 and 3 in there, the ones that are shown on the top of page 111. Well, I put in what they said, and it comes back, cannot get /name/John. What I want you to do when we get done today, that you're going to have time to work on later on this week, those tests. But what I want you to do is I want you to start back on chapter 8, and anything you haven't typed in, anything that we typed in that hasn't worked, I want you to key it in, and I'll do the same. All right, the last part of the chapter, which starts on the middle of page 111, is what I mentioned to you before, and that is this idea of using partials. All right, and what partials basically allow you to do is it says it's a shell in which your views are rendered. So again, it's the idea where you can put in some code and you can use it over and over again. In fact, if you would please look on page 112, and you look on the bottom of the page, what they're saying in there is your top navigation area and your footer are not going to change between pages. What's going to change is the content area that's in the middle. So by using a partial, okay, and you might have to do a little bit of work with your CSS, etc., but by using a partial like this, basically what you have is the ability to write it once and use it multiple times. So all that makes sense. All right. Let's finish up and go over chapter 11 then, and it's a pretty short chapter, really. So I'm on page 114. Configurations and error handling. So I mentioned in the last chapter we looked a little bit at EJS. In this chapter they talk about changing your start script, serving static pages with express.js, and creating middleware functions with error handling. Whether it's your own, if it's your own middleware, it only has the error handling you put into it. Okay. So the author says, in this lesson you explore ways to serve error pages to your browser window when appropriate. And you heard this already, so I'm not going to bore you with it, but you've already heard, as an example, that 400 errors mean file not found type of thing. 500 errors are server errors. 200s are not errors. They're typically okay, or everything's working cool type of an idea. So we have talked about that earlier. So they mentioned on page 115, they talk about modifying the start script on page 115. It says, to start this lesson, modify a file you haven't touched in a while. The package.json file, it says make a copy of your Express templates folder from chapter 10. We don't have to do that. But it says add a comma to that test script and put in start node main.js. Well, guess what? You already have that. Node main is the same as node main.js. it defaults to .js. You don't believe me? Just go back to your package.json file and add a .js onto there. It won't hurt anything. It won't help anything. So we've already done that, in other words. All right, handling errors then. I'm up on page 116. And it says, so far, Express.js has been a great improvement on the development process. Well, not really, because we've had a problem getting some of it to work. But it says one perk is that the app doesn't hang forever when a request is made for a path to which no route exists. You just get that cannot find error right away. That's what they're saying. But that's not very nice for an end user. In fact, that's very unprofessional. You don't ever want it to come back to an end user where it says cannot find this. All right. So it says that's an error. You can take a few different approaches. It says one is you can log it to the console, and that's totally fine. But if you log something to the console, if there's an error, if I'm an end user, that doesn't do diddly for me. I don't understand what the hell that means anyway. All right. So the author says, I recommend that you create a new controller and install the HTTP status codes package in the project's terminal window. You already know what that is. I mean, we've gone through that one before. So what they're saying is in virtually any project where you're going to have error handling, all right, where it's possible to get a file not found, an internal server error, etc., you will be adding that package, and you'll be doing the npm I HTTP status codes. Okay? All right. So they have you go through here. I'll have you just do this yourself, okay? But it says here, let's just go through the code. It says create a new file called errorcontroller.js. And it says add the function shown. It's a very generic, all right, it's a very generic error that basically says just log the error. And since you're writing it, and since it's your middleware, this is middleware, since you're writing it, you need that next line in there to tell it to continue on. Okay? So it says you need to accept 4 arguments. The first one always represents the error object. Typically, that has to be first. All right, if you remember, we looked earlier at some things where we had error and data. Error always has to come first. Now it's error, and again, ideally, that's never going to have anything in it. It'll be null all the time. Then the request object, the response object, and next. So you can tell it to continue on. All right. On 117, it says, next, you need to tell Express to use the middleware function by requiring error. Does that make sense now that when we do the require, and it'll be /, you'll have to give it the right path, in other words. It'll have to know exactly. So that on your home page, that's going to be /controllers/errorcontroller.js. Does that make sense? And for the home one, it'll be /controllers/homecontroller.js. All right. So they mention there underneath the warning, it says by default, Express handles any errors at the end of processing a request. If you want to respond with a custom message, it says you can add a catch-all at the end of your routes. Okay? And that's what they're basically having you do in here. So if you look at the example in 11.3, and again, I'll let you work on that yourself, what it's saying is if it's not found, it's going to come back, the page does not exist. And if it's an internal server error, that means you can't control that. That's an error on the server side. So that's like me calling Amazon and saying that I want something. I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I've had it happen already, where it'll come back and it'll say internal error, try again later, or something like that. That's what this is, basically. So on the bottom of page 117 and going on to 118, it says, in main.js, order matters. Respond, no resource found will catch all requests with no matching routes, and respond internal error will catch any requests where errors have occurred. So in other words, put them in that order. If you flip them, you'll never get to the other error. So there's the app.use in the next one. So that's adding the middleware. So you have to do 2 different things. You've got to require it, and then you've got to tell the system you're using it. All right? So Again, then they say handle missing routes. What they're doing in 11.5 is they're trying to come up with a custom error message that's generic. So in other words, what they're trying to do is rather than just saying not found, all right, they're going to send the content. And if you don't get that when you run through it, I think it'll make a lot more sense to you, okay? All right. Says, I'm up to page 119, 11.3, serving static files. All right. All right. And the author says, the last section here is a short one, and it is. It's half a page. In your application from Unit 1, serving all different types of static files and assets would require hundreds of lines of code. With Express, it's just a couple lines of code. Another reason for using it. All right. So it says to set up this task, you will need to use the static method from the Express module. You see where I am? I'm right underneath the note that's on page 119. All right. It says this method takes an absolute path to the folder containing your static files. Then, as with any other middleware function, you need to tell express.js to use this. The point is, they don't even have you do it in here. This is stuff that we're going to be looking at later. Does that make sense? All right. And again, I realize it might sound a little, or I might sound a little flitty, but as we go through this and we create a couple apps, I think it's going to do nothing but make more and more sense to you. All right. So I want to create at least one app and possibly two apps before you even start working on the capstone here. I think it's going to make a lot more sense doing it that way. So let's look at the capstone. I'm on page 121. It's not a long section. All right, it's about 10 pages. All right, so capstone, enhancing the Confetti Cuisine site with express.js. It says here, to begin the site design, I'm going to create a new directory called, well, you don't have to do that. You can start all over again if you want to. I don't really see the advantage of doing that. Now, one thing, Keegan, that I didn't mention to you last time, but you might want to do this. I think this would be a really good idea. And let's do this together. It's been a while probably for you. Let's go to github.com. All right. So out on the internet, go out to github.com. It may ask you, it's been a while, it may ask you for your password, it may not. Did it? Mm-hmm. Good. All right. Then up near the upper right-hand corner, see the plus sign? Yeah. Click the plus sign, choose New Repository, and then it comes up with the Create a New Repository dialog there. Down below where it's got repository name, can you see that? So it should have Keegan Young or whatever your login is. Put in there confetti_cuisine. Have it be the exact same name as the one you used when you created your last project, which I think was Confetti Cuisine, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you've got that? All right. Let's just keep it public. I don't care. You're the only one in this class, so it's not going to matter. So click Create Repository. Did it come back up? Do you have like a little blue box that says Quick Setup? All right. Inside of there, you see that URL? Yeah. Does it start with HTTPS? Good. Either click the thing over to the right, which copies it to the clipboard, or else highlight all of it and copy it to the clipboard. Okay? Got all that? Mm-hmm. All right. Go back. Let's see. Stop the server. It's going to be fine. You're not going to need the server for what we're about to do right now. Okay? And in fact, let's just close this instance right here. We're just going to close it. We're going to close this instance of our server. So that git bash, just close it. If it tells you that it's still running, just say okay, and it'll close it anyway. Is it closed? Mm-hmm. All right. Now go on your desktop. Go over to your folder that's called Confetti Cuisine. All right. And inside of that Confetti Cuisine folder, in fact, mine is called Confetti Cuisine 01. I'm going to change the name of it right now just to Confetti Cuisine. There. All right. Right mouse click on, don't open the, well, you can open the folder. In fact, open the folder. And in mine, I've got node modules, public, views, and a bunch of other stuff. You probably have the same. Right mouse click in there. An empty spot that's in there. And choose Git Bash here. Now, am I right in assuming that in that folder, you do not have a Git folder in your Confetti Cuisine folder? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. All right. So, from your Git Bash window, type in Git space init, 2 words, Git space init, and hit enter. Now you should have a .git folder in yours. GIT. GIT space INIT. It should say initialized empty Git repository. Do you now have a .git folder up in your project too? You actually probably do, but you probably don't have your extensions turned off. So we'll find out in a minute. If this, type in git space minus git space minus version. Why is it not working? I think it's minus. Yeah. Did it come back and say something like 2.28? So git space minus version. Okay, so right now we're going to put in a few commands. Okay, you can clear your screen, your Git screen. Type in git space add space period. Git space add space, then just a period. And hit enter. Now you might get a bunch of warnings about line feeds, LFs. Don't worry about it. It's nothing. It really and truly is nothing. All right. Then did it come back? Your prompt come back? Type in git space commit space minus little, all in lowercase, git space commit space minus little m space, then in double quotes put in Confetti Cuisine capstone. Let's see what that one was called. Capstone colon, we use the same names they have. Capstone colon space creating your first web application. So git space commit space minus m space, and then in double quotes, Confetti Cuisine capstone colon creating your first web application. Look on page 73. Okay, I'll read it again. Git space commit commit space minus little m space, then in double quotes the word confetti space the word cuisine space the word capstone colon creating your first web application. All right. And we don't have to do this, but if you can, you should be able to use your arrow keys to go back and forth. Let's instead of saying Confetti Cuisine, let's do this. Let's say Confetti Cuisine capstone 01. Capstone space 01. Then when you do the next one, it'll be 02, etc. All right. So I've got git space commit space minus m space, then in double quotes confetti space cuisine space capstone space 01 : space creating your first web application. You have all that? Good. Hit enter. They've got a bunch of stuff will come up. Mine says 24 files changed. Yours might have more. It's no big thing one way or the other. Got all that? Mm-hmm. All right. Now you're going to have to go back. In fact, you don't have to go back. Did we copy that HTTP thing, right? That thing that was in there on github.com? Did we copy that? Yeah. Okay. Then right now the next thing for you to type in is git space. I'm going to do it with you. So git space remote, R-E-M-O-T-E, space add space origin space. So right now you've got git and a space, the word remote and a space, the word add and a space, the word origin and a space. All right. I didn't copy that thing from GitHub. I didn't do what I asked you to do. So like we said, you want git space remote space add space origin space, then right mouse click and paste back in what you just had, the https://, okay? Once you put that in, got it? Hit enter. It may come back like that with just your prompt. That's good. Then type in git space push space origin space master and hit enter. This may take a few seconds. This may take closer to a minute. Okay, then it's asking you for your login and your password. Do you remember those? Good. That does come up sometimes. Tell me when you're all set then. Okay? All right. Then go back to your github.com window that you had. All right. And you know where you're up way in the upper left hand corner, you've got the left arrow, and then you got a right arrow, and then you've got another thing next to it. Let's click that one. That'll refresh your screen. And that should show you inside of there all of the stuff that you just pushed. Correct? Yeah. You now have your copy of part 1. Now, let's assume for a second we figure out what the problem you were having with your code. So you fix it. Fix it in this folder. You with me? Fix it in this folder. Then just go back after you made your change, do another git add dot, another git commit, and another git push. And it'll push it out here. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So you'll have all of this stuff out here. So, but the reason I'm telling you this is now at least you're going to have a permanent copy of everything that you're working on. All right? So, that said, let's jump back into the book. All right, so we don't have to, you can create a new project. He does this most of the chapters. I don't know why. All right? And he gives you on the next page there, on the bottom of page 70, not 74, on the bottom of page 122, or the middle of page 122, what your package.json will look like. All right? Now, you know now that if you want to, where it's got, see how he's made the changes in the start file? See that where it says start node main.js? You can put that in there. You can add nodemon for this project if you want to. And just like we did for the last one, you can put a dev, or you don't have to call it dev. Since we're in developer mode, that's why I called it dev. All right, so you can do that too if you want to. But look on the screen. You're going to have to add Express. You're going to have to add Express.js layouts. And you're going to have to add HTTP status codes. Do you see those there? So those are all going to be installs for you. Don't do it now, but you're just going to do that. All right. Then when you get done, if you turn up to page 123, the next page in your book, you're going to have to set up this structure. Right now, you've got main. Let's talk about what you've got. You've got main.js, right? You've got public. You've got a CSS folder. You've got a confetti cuisine.css. You've got bootstrap.css. Under images, you've got your images. Okay? You've got the confetti cuisine.js. You've got the package lock file. You've got the package JSON file. You with me? So you've got to go in later and add in there a controllers folder and put in your controllers folder home controller.js, error controller.js. You with me? Mm-hmm. Then go into your views folder. In your views folder now, you've got index.html, courses.html, etc. But put in these files that you see right here. All right? Okay. Then next is on the bottom, starting on the bottom of 123, is building the application. Section 12.2 that starts on the bottom of page 123. It says, now that the application has been set up and Express has been installed, we'll create the main application file. That's what's shown on page 124 in 12.3. Now, I think this is why the author does it this way. I mean, I don't understand doing it this way. I think you're better off using Git and doing it the way I'm showing you. You may agree, you may not agree. But you're going to have to go back into your main.js and change it so it looks like this. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Then it says you want to add body parsing on page 124, which we really haven't gone into very much, but it's going to give you the ability to go in and grab things that are added by the system, basically. All right? And you'll be able to get and grab them with your own code. All right. Then on the bottom of page 124, going on to 125, this is the code originally you're going to put in your home controller.js file. The stuff that's shown on page 125. All right, you can read it yourself. You can see it there. Then after you add that code there, which is saying, hey, when you bring up courses, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to show courses.ejs, etc., those files. Then you've got to go back into main.js and add those 3 lines that are shown on the bottom of page 125. Okay? Then we've got routing to views. And if you turn up to page 126, these are the views that you're going to have. All right, so these are the EJS files we already mentioned previously that you're going to have to create. Mm-hmm. All right? So they show you those. You can create those. And it says there, enable EJS rendering, layout rendering in main.js. So you're going to have to add the code to main.js that's shown near the top of page 127. All right? Serving static views, if we turn up to page 128, and you look halfway down on the page, this is the code that you're going to have to be putting in your home controller file. So what we're doing here, and it may or may not make sense, is we're defining a JavaScript array called courses. All right, each array, it's an array of objects. So each array element will have a title and a cost. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. And then we're telling it basically to show that information by passing it to our view. All right, so in English, if you turn up to page 129 and you look in here, and you look at the picture that's halfway down on page 129, this is what should happen. Does that make sense? All right. And they show you above that the content that you'll need to add to courses.ejs. Finally, the last thing that you do in here, starting on the bottom of 129 and going on to 130, is you handle errors. So on page 130, they show you the code that you'll have to add to your error controller.ejs file. Then once you do that, you've got to also add those routes back into main.js as shown on the bottom of page 130. Okay? Finally, if you look up on the screen here on page 131, now again, this is me. I don't think this is funny. I'm not trying to be funny. I just want you to know that. I think when you've got an error, you shouldn't show a picture of a kitten. See that? I think you should come up with something that looks better. But since we've been having problems, you might want to use that picture for now. That's up to you. Don't start on this now. Go back through and start reading.